Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday.
Morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever parts of the world you're in.
Morning here,
Okay.
Ah, Venice, where are you? Which part of the world are you in?
Los Angeles.
Ah,
Okay, so it's 9:31 there, huh?
Yeah.
Great, great. Well, we're glad to have you with us.
Yeah.
Hi, Katrina Kimball. Hi, Joelle Bassino. Joelle Bassino, are you new with us? I haven't seen your name before, I don't recall.
Yes, I'm new. Elizabeth Trainer sent it over to me.
oh,
Oh, Elizabeth.
fantastic. Yes. I just saw her a couple of weeks
Yeah.
ago at a celebration for one of her colleagues, our colleague's birthday. Nice to meet. Are you at RWJ Barnabas?
No, I actually am at Prudential. So I had to call in because I just signed up through my work email and they like cut our mics off. So the phone number that's calling in is me also. The
Okay,
973-951.
got it, got it. We're glad to have you. Glad you could join us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. So today, this was our call for today was like, if you are not exactly where you want to be in your career, then this one is for you. Oh, all right, sorry about that. I think oh there you go. Okay, we're on mute. Yeah, so our call to action was for folks that want to get further in their careers. And so many of us can say that we're not exactly where we want to be because we're on a trajectory. We're still progressing towards our goals and our visions that we have for our career. And so we thank you all for joining us today. We're going to be talking about overcoming barriers to effectiveness, and then we'll be giving some other clues about breaking the mold or tips for breaking the mold. Michelle's going to tell you all about that. I just want to welcome you and say that we appreciate you joining us as always. We are going to go live on Facebook in just a moment. And so, we always encourage you to come on camera with us if you can. We always encourage you to participate with us. And this is always a discussion, not just us talking at you, but with you. We'll have some opportunities for coaching if you are interested. We should have some time for that as well. And yeah, we'll be asking for your input as well. We came up with our list of things, but we'll be asking you to help us fill that list in too. So it's lots to look forward to. I'm going to get us live on Facebook. Michelle, do you want to just introduce yourself as we always start with?
Absolutely. So once again, it's good to see some familiar faces and welcome many of the new attendees. So I'm Michelle Brown. I'm an executive coach and talent development specialist. My company, Into Action Coaching, is a 16-year-old talent development agency, and we are honored to really be able to work with organizations and individuals around their professional development. And just to give you context for new joinees, Amber and I are colleagues and very good friends. She'll introduce herself in a minute, but we started the purpose-driven uh, leadership lunch and learn at the onset of the pandemic, because the passion that we have as coaches, and certainly with what we were grappling with, we wanted really to kind of jump in and provide pro bono support for professionals such as yourselves to kind of get on track, stay on track, and just be your best selves and get out of the way any distractions that's what we're going to be talking about that get in the way of really just being optimal.
Yes, yes. And Michelle, yes, I love to hear you say that we're colleagues and really good friends because we are. I love doing this with you. It's always wonderful. Michelle is very humble. She is also my mentor, and she has led and guided me throughout my career and inspired me in many of the things that I do. And I'm always grateful to you. So, hello, hello. I am Amberly Forrester. I am a life and business coach, and I'm also a positive psychology practitioner. What that means is basically I'm an organizational well-being consultant and practitioner and trainer and coach, and I come up with all of these different programs and webinars and trainings and curriculum to help people be well, individuals and collectively well, individually and collectively well within organizations, schools, workplaces, and all. And so, as Michelle mentioned, yes, we do this as a labor of love. We join you every month on Wednesday, the first Wednesday of the month, to do these purpose-driven professional lunch and learns in an effort to help you to build on your personal development and your professional development and upskill and uplevel you to accomplish your dreams, your vision, and the goals that you have for yourself. So, Michelle is going to kick us off in our discussion today. We are, as she mentioned, we're talking about wellness in the workplace. I'm going to share a presentation with you so we can talk about how to break this mold, how to overcome these barriers, and accomplish our goals, get further in our careers. This is important and great stuff. Let me just adjust my screen for optimal viewing, and we'll jump right in.
Yeah, so ladies, we are living or continuing to live in unprecedented times. And, what Amber and I are experiencing as coaches and consultants with the clients that we have the honor of supporting is that with everything that we are grappling with in our lives, the polarization of our society, just sometimes the chaos that working from home has continued to introduce into our lives, we're really feeling overtasked and overwhelmed and just plain stressed out. And some of the sources of these challenges can be internal. We're going to be talking about, the kind of intrinsic, what our mindset is contributing to this overwhelm, and externally, what's happening in our environment that really gets us kind of off track. And this, honestly, we've all been kind of reading the papers and seeing the trends. It's resulting in unprecedented a mass exodus from the workforce. People are so stressed out that they are leaving their jobs in abundance. And even if they decide to stay, many of you may be in this situation where you're still gainfully employed, but there's simply a lack of engagement and fulfillment in what your current role may be. So our conversation today, and again, we're calling it a conversation. This is not didactic. This is not a lecture. We want to really kind of hear from you because, we're all in this together. Is it really intended to identify some of the sources of those challenges, but most importantly, break the mold, as Amber said, and help to identify what we could be doing, what are the solutions and the remedies that are really going to help us eradicate some of those challenges to the best of our ability and with whatever we may have control over. So that's kind of the context of our discussion today.
Yes. All right. And so we want to start with actually, as we keep mentioning this discussion, asking you some questions. We came up with a list of barriers. We do preparation for these calls over a few hours every month where Michelle and I go through and we think about, the challenges that we personally have had and some of our clients have had. And we include these in our presentation and come up with solutions together through our research and through our own personal recommendations. But we want to hear from you. What are some of the barriers that prevent you from being highly effective at work? We'll give you a moment to think about that, but feel free to use the chat or even better to unmute and share.
Mhm.
Hey Amber, this is Katrina.
Hi,
For
Katrina.
me, we've had so many people. I work at a hospital, and my two biggest barriers is one, we've lost so many people from burnout
Mm.
and just not having enough people on the team to do the work. And the second thing is the personal development, because we're spread is so thin. I'm having to go outside and create and find personal development to keep myself motivated.
Mm.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to you with that, Katrina. Katrina has a really great platform too, Katrina. When we're coming up with our solutions, I would love for you to share the work that you do with women and maybe some of the things that you found to be beneficial for the women that you work with as well. Because not only do you go out and seek your own personal and professional development, but you create opportunities for others as well. So just want to give you a shout out on that. But thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we got a burnout, and
Actually, it's lack of resources,
lack of resources.
right? Yeah, which is causing the burnout, and professional development.
Yeah, that's hit it dead on the head. Like today, I didn't want to miss, but I'm running to pick up lunch from my mom because I'm a caregiver too. So I was like, I'm gonna do it some kind of way today.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you. This is how you give to yourself. And keep in mind, we're recording this. So if for any reason you miss any part because you can't stay until the end, you'll be able to view it at your leisure.
Yes, and we're live on Facebook, so you can follow us on Facebook and see it there as well. All right, anyone else? What? Thank you for that, Katrina. What are some other barriers that we're feeling are preventing us from being highly effective at work? Well, we will jump into some if there are none other that you guys can come up with. We're going to jump into some, and then you're probably going to go, oh, yeah, me too. I can tell we don't have any millennials on the call right now because nobody said social media. Not one, not yet. But I know that's a barrier for a lot of folks.
Ladies, I'm still working from home, so I would like to just know what other people are, experiencing. 'Cause
Experience.
I
But
have,
but Venice, I'm glad you bring that up because working from home can still, there still poses a lot of barriers. I can relate to you in that I literally just got a shared office space last week because I had to get out of my home. The personal things that I want to do within my home can sometimes be barriers to getting my work done. Those are distractions, right? So
yes.
can you relate? Is that something you deal with as well?
Well, you know what? It's just me in
Mhm.
this little area, this little space that I'm living in. So I became aware of, I don't have the challenges that other people have. And that's why I became this member of this group. They're in the UK. It has to do with the struggle that working mothers have gone through because of the pandemic. And I didn't realize that so much was going on out there because I really kind of live in a bubble.
Mhm.
So, but I like to be aware of what's happening and what's affecting other people so that I can figure out how I can assist and help. So my situation is, I guess, it's not, well, it's unique. Um, and that's what, it's kind of how I got through everything because I was able to just have everything the way I needed it to get me through 2020 and 2021.
So Venice, I have a question. So just so we have context, so working from home is not a bad, I mean, is there any part of it that is an hindrance to you being effective, or are you saying no?
No, because I'm just so, I mean, I micromanage myself
Mhm.
and I'm a time management. Uh, I'm just crazy about time management, organization,
Mhm.
all of those things that we need to have in place. I
Mhm.
have those things in place. I can tell you that, I mean, when I have my television on, it's just background noise, but it's to keep me engaged and current with everything that's going on in the world.
Mhm.
So I don't have that problem of sitting on the couch and being, addicted to television. It runs in the background like white noise.
Mhm.
The other place that I spend a lot of time is LinkedIn. I don't have Instagram. I don't have all of the other social media platforms. The only one that I spend time in is LinkedIn, but I'm using that overall for just like my website, my resumes there, my activity, my networking. So I can't think of
Well,
anything.
I'll say this, and we actually, you're a mind reader because we kind of captured. So you have actually overcome the impediment in terms of what your environment, meaning you're working from home, but you overcame it because you're reaching out to other groups to ensure that your community, so to speak, it may not be within a work environment, but you are using a virtual community to stay connected.
Yes.
So there was a maybe subliminal or unconscious barrier, but you overcame it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, and just finding you guys because I went online in 2020 And I mean, it was, I think that's what got me through 2020 was connecting with communities,
Mhm,
as you mentioned.
mhm, mhm. Got it. Got it. Good.
It sounds like you're high in self-regulation, Venice. You
I
got
know, Amber, I am.
that's excellent. That is.
I
That
don't know
is.
if it can drive people crazy, but I am.
But that's a strength, and that's wonderful. A lot of people work on that, and so as we come up with solutions, I hope that you can help us in building that list because I can imagine that you've come up with some, and maybe even some that we haven't thought of.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So Michelle's going to take us into what we titled as "Oh no, you gotta go," and those are just these things that are like that we know are the glaring red lights, the impediments to our productivity and our effectiveness at work. And so Michelle's going to take us through those.
Mhm. Thanks, Amber. So we basically came up with three categories of what could be barriers: limiting beliefs, that's sort of the internal or kind of intrinsic, external distractions, and a lack of planning. So diving into each one of these, when we think about limiting beliefs, oftentimes, we have a fixed mindset based on past experience. And oftentimes this is where sort of the ego comes through the back door. It's a naysaying, or an I can't, or it's part of the imposter syndrome, right? It's something that causes us to not believe in the possibility of what's possible, and can't think through what changes can be made that are within our control. Victim mentality. So much of what's happened over the course of these 2 years, whether it's the social injustices, whether it's the outcome of the election, whether it was COVID, you name it, we're living in a tsunami of challenges. And oftentimes we have a tendency to just feel victimized by these situations and these circumstances. And that can absolutely be a barrier and an impediment to us being powerful and being effective, because we just feel like all of this pressure has been put upon us. And how do we just, emerge out of the clutter? A lack of confidence is another barrier. The I can't as opposed to the I can, not having the can do attitude, not feeling that we have the experience or the position power to make the changes that are important for us to be effective. And overanalyzing. We have sometimes a tendency to have stinking thinking, where we are so immersed in what's wrong, and we overanalyze, what might be the solutions, that again, that adds to a sense of overwhelm relative to, I don't even know what the remedies or solutions are, because I'm just bogged down with all of the problems that, are a bit of a tsunami. In the other category of distractions, as Amber made reference, social media. We are, as a society, bombarded with social media. So, if we're addicted to it in any way, shape, or form, or even if we're not addicted to it, if we go on to whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook, it can occupy not only our time, because we kind of get sucked into the messages and sometimes we feel compelled to kind of have to answer it. And the fact that we're working from home and we have sort of the flexibility of time, we may get a ping from, someone who's messaged us on LinkedIn, and then that becomes a distraction because we kind of feel compelled to answer it in that moment. So we're going to be talking about, how to overcome those distractions. Gossip. Whether we're in a work environment or even just attending a Zoom call, there's oftentimes, things that are happening in people's lives, even within our own lives, that we kind of get caught up in the rumor mill, or people gossiping. I had a session with a client today. She's actually a physician, and she said that she just gets distracted by being on calls with colleagues, and all they want to do is complain about kind of what's wrong and what the organization isn't doing. And so I was looking to support her in how she can be an empowered informal leader to not let the gossip and the naysaying mindset overhaul her emotional state, but how she can be a change agent and bringing, some optimism. So again, we don't have to be in a workplace to have gossip impact us. It will kind of follow us even if we're working virtually. Emails and meetings. Whew, I mean, it's the fact that so many of us are working from home, and connecting with our supervisors or our peers, or supervising those that report into us, because we're meeting on a video conference method or conference calls. Oftentimes meetings are now back to back, right? Because it's not like we have to travel someplace, and certainly, we're not giving ourselves enough time to actually even breathe and pause. And emails are, that was a issue that, was an overwhelm even prior to COVID and working from home. The fact that now in terms of communication, people, I just call it tag you're it. Send an email as opposed to, either picking up the phone or scheduling a conversation via a meeting. So emails, again, can get so overwhelming that you just don't have the time to kind of address them appropriately, which then is causing a real imbalance in terms of work life. And I don't know that we really will ever have a balance. I call it work-life integration. For the most part, it's how do we make sure that with all these distractions and the responsibilities that pull us in a gazillion different directions, how do we find the time and make the commitment to put ourselves first? So Amber's going to be talking a lot about what those remedies might look like. And then the last category, lack of planning, is procrastination. Sometimes when we are so overwhelmed with the state of, our life, we can't even figure out what's the next step that we need to do. So we procrastinate, because if we don't have the answers, we may have more questions than we have answers. We have a tendency to kind of put things off, and then they never get resolved. Undefined priorities. When you have so many things competing for your time and attention, how do we honestly come up with a list of what is urgent and important? There's a priority matrix that I offer a lot of my clients, which is, a quadrant that looks at all of the tasks and projects and initiatives you may have on your plate, and you identify in the top right-hand corner what's urgent and important. So, it's important for us to be able to not put everything on the top of that list of a top priority, but, what might be urgent but not important, and what may be important and not urgent. So it's really defining what your priorities are.
Pardon me, Michelle, Venice asked, is that the Eisenhower Matrix?
Is it, I'm not familiar with the term Eisenhower, so tell me more and I'll look to see if it's the same as what I'm referencing as the priority matrix.
Let's see, there's two things. I discovered the Eisenhower Matrix, and it has 4 quadrants.
Mm-hmm.
The Pomodoro is a time management.
Yeah, that's the tomato. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the tomato.
Mm-hmm.
So between those two, because I know there's a lot, but between those two.
It sounds like it sounds familiar to the Eisenhower Matrix.
Yeah, okay.
In the sense that, yeah, it's kind of what's important and what's urgent.
Yes.
Is sort of in the axis, and then it's determining where they intersect. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for bringing those methods up. Those are things, you ladies on the call may want to research, especially the Pomodoro technique, which is, kind of putting a timer on what our task might be, just to avoid us interrupting ourselves or being interrupted by other people. And then lastly, environment, our space, can be a distraction if it's not organized, or working from home has caused, because I mean, I don't have this issue myself because my whole practice has been virtual for the 16 years that I've been in business. But, people feel like, what, let me throw a load of laundry in because you're working from home and you just kind of feel the flexibility. And it's not to say that we can't intersperse some personal tasks in amongst, our work, because if we're working from home, it's no longer 8 to 6 or 9 to 5. But again, sometimes if we're not planning out exactly, what we should be doing and how we want our work environment to work for us, it can be a distraction. So now we
Yes.
want to hear from any of you, anything else that might be kind of a barrier to your effectiveness above and beyond what we've just shared.
I will share the phone
Mm,
and the phone calls.
mm,
Those drove me nuts. So what I did was I put up, I call it a no phone zone. And it took me a while to get people used to the fact that they can't just pick up the phone and call me, because I treat my day like my work day. I used to work at Disney 9 to 6,
mhm,
and I treat my working from home day the same way, 9 to 6.
mhm.
And I started letting people know that if we need to have a conversation more than 15 minutes, then I would have to put it on the calendar. And I calendar calls for an hour,
Mhm.
because you wind up talking to people and then hours go by. So 15 minutes goes by, it all goes by so fast. So I tell people that because some people were offended, and I say, well, I calendar the calls because then I'm able to have the conversation with you for a full hour with no distractions, no interruptions, and they have my full attention.
So I have a
And
question for you, Denise.
yes,
So what caused you to not allow those phone calls when they were coming in to go to voicemail?
because if they go to voicemail, that's another step. It's time consuming in the day where you have to go back and get the messages
Mhm.
and take down who calls, phone numbers, why they called, and then you have to create another step where you write it down on a piece of paper or you put it onto the computer.
Mhm.
Um, so I wanted to just eliminate that step,
Got it.
those steps.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. So what you did was very efficient, which is instead of you on the back end having to respond to all of those left messages, you wanted to communicate to the callers. This is what I'm asking. Yeah.
Was I clear about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone else have any other barriers that they're kind of still grappling with or may have overcome, like Denise?
I'll just speak to within the limiting beliefs, something that's come up for a few of my clients that I've worked with, and that's it kind of goes between victim mentality and lack of confidence, and it's a theory called the learned helplessness theory. And so during 2020, we got hit with so many uh, things that were out of our control that it could have left a lot of us feeling like we were helpless. And so, if you get hit with one barrier after another and you're not able to see or have hope for getting beyond the situation, a lot of times we can get into a place where we feel like, gosh, I might as well just throw my hands up. Nothing I do matters. It's not going to get me anywhere. It's not going to get me any further. And so, um, I had a few of my clients feeling just a bit helpless, and so that was a barrier, and they had to recognize that they were that it was just their thinking, and their inability to think beyond their problem and not the reality of what it was. And so I that might not have affected any of us on this call, but I just want to bring that up, and that it came from this experiment that was done back in the day, the term learned helplessness, where they put dogs in cages and they shocked the bottom of their paws, and some of them were able to move, some of them were in harnesses and they weren't able to move. For the dogs that were not able to move, even when they took the harness off, they still stayed there and took the shock. And 1/3 of them still stayed there and took the shot, and 2/3 of them moved. But I just found that to be so fascinating and interesting that it made me ask myself questions about in what places of my life may I still be staying there and taking the shock, and I don't have to. But we just kind of get trained to think, I have to deal with this, or I have to, I can't get beyond this. So, Venice, what I hear you saying is you don't, that mentality is not something that you have, because you're more like, okay, no, I don't have to, I can put up my barriers. I know that I can get beyond things. But, just recognizing that sometimes that's a powerful question to ask ourselves is, what may I still be standing here and taking the shock of that is not, serving me, or that I don't that I'm not harnessed in anymore. And
Amber,
hmm
I did have victim mentality for a long time because my job was a blindside. My job loss was blindside. So, yeah, I had that victim mentality. I was in my 50s. I was an African American woman and I lost my income. I didn't know what to do. The victim mentality I did have when I left that job, but I connected with Dress for Success, and that turned everything around for me. And I think I also met you through Dress for Success as well, right?
oh yeah,
In 2020.
yeah,
So I definitely had the victim mentality.
yeah. But you actively sought out solutions to that. So I hear a lot of self-awareness and, agency in that. Okay, what is it that I need to get beyond this mentality? And that awareness is so key. So, Venice, we're like celebrating you and your and where you are now in 2021, and, how much of a difference a year makes. And I'm sure that that inspires other folks who are listening too. If we don't have any other, oh, go ahead, Michelle. I'm sorry, you're muted though.
Thing. So I also wanted to address what Katrina had shared with us at the onset, which is one of her barriers is limited resources, right? So yeah. And then she also captured professional development, right? So Katrina, can you tell us more about both of these areas and how it's impacting your effectiveness? You want to share more?
I know Katrina was on the go, so I'm not
Oh, maybe
sure.
not here. Okay.
I'm here. I'm
Oh, there
sorry.
you go.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to get off mute. Could you repeat that question for me?
Yeah, so you had identified limited resources and
Oh,
professional development, right, as kind of an impediment for you to being highly effective. Um,
oh,
you want to
yeah.
share more? Yeah, you want to even share a possible remedy or remedies, suggested remedies, when we get to that section.
Sure. I'd be more than happy to.
So how is not having resources impacting your effectiveness?
Well, not having the resource,
You mute. Oh,
you can have these great programs that you want to do, or you could have projects that could really impact the community. But when you don't have the resources um, to initiate a strategic plan, it hinders what they're trying to do.
mhm,
And then the flip side, you can give people resources, but if you don't teach them how to use them, it's still not a resource.
mhm,
It's just a hindrance. And
mhm,
so I kind of find myself going from not having exactly what I need to getting things that don't really support what I'm trying to do. So I find myself, especially in the nonprofit area, because that's where I work at, I find myself really reaching out to a lot of my nonprofit friends and just trying to not even think out the box, but just create a whole nother box to get it done. Um, so it's very challenging. And then the other piece is just short staff. I mean, my area went from having 4 people to it's just me now. So um, it can be overwhelming at times.
mhm.
But I know the work is important and I know the community needs it. But when I speak of resources, I'm talking about having essentially funding to do the programming, having community partners that's willing to come and do the work. So the work I do is around Black women in my community, helping them with health and wellness, financial wellness, spiritual wellness, and it's called My Sister's Keeper. And it's really needed in my community because 28% of my population is Black women. But most of the women in my community don't own their own homes. A lot of them don't have bank accounts. So just trying to shift the mindset of the women in my community, because if you're going to change the community, you got to start with the people that's in it. So that's just a synopsis of everything that I'm dealing with.
Got it. Got it. Okay. We'll look to sort of provide some suggestions on remedies to both of those issues. Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
I'm just celebrating you guys' resourcefulness, though. I mean, we've got a great resourceful, solutions focused group here. All right. So we're going to jump in and, uh-oh, I think I
Can I
shared.
add something too about the resources?
We would love for you to. Please do.
So I agree. Like what I find out, finally we're fully staffed, but for a couple, like several months between people leaving the job and going on maternity or paternity leave, like we were very short staffed. And then just from being short staffed, you know, they don't always replace the resources. So to try and get involved, you know, pulled into other projects or additional meetings that you have to go to or additional things that are due, it's very hard to be effective in those situations when you don't have the right amount of people, because you're being pulled in so many directions. You can't give, you know, the quality work that you would be expected to give because you're only like have 50% capacity. So that's what I've been experiencing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Amber's going to sort of talk to that. And I have a radical suggestion in terms of kind of at least one way to meet that limited resource dilemma. And I'm going to call it radical because it requires a lot of courage, but I'll address it when we get to that point.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to take us into some recommendations for breaking the mold. I'm going to share my screen with you again in a moment, but I'll just talk through this so you can focus on what I'm saying, and then I'll share the visual with you. This may surprise you as our first recommendation. We've got 3 Ps for you, and the first
Hang
one.
on. It's not showing the PowerPoint.
Oh, I know. I just said I'm going to talk through it, and then I'll share the PowerPoint. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So the first is to pause. Here, I'll share it and then I'll take it off. I just don't want us to focus on the screen for the entire time. So the first recommendation is to pause. So we have pause, prioritize, and purpose, and we're going to get into each of those. So pausing is our first recommendation because our natural inclination when something isn't going right is often to do. And recognizing that we are human beings and not human doings is an important part of our process. And so, especially as women, you know, we are fixers and we want to be there for everyone. And we want to, you know, so many of us, even on this call, right? We don't like to get stuck in a problem. And so, you know, going and doing and actions feels like what's right. But we really, in order to have the self-awareness that we need around recognizing what our barriers are and recognizing what therefore our needs are, that pause is really important. It's not a part that's built into our workday often where we say, I'm going to take a part of my workday to pause, right? And so we can often neglect this, but this is a big part of where our EQ, our emotional intelligence comes from. Oh, I love this recommendation. Put it on the calendar. Yes, putting pausing on the calendar, your time for reflection. Yeah, and so, you know, when we take the time to build our emotional intelligence, to have self-awareness, to do our assessments. Michelle has a whole list of assessments that she works with her clients that she gives them in the beginning of her interaction with them to help build that self-awareness around who we are, what we need, and what we may be lacking. And so sometimes a humbling experience that may not be comfortable for all of us to do, but so empowering in recognizing where there may be flaws or deficiencies or opportunities for growth. And that comes from that pause and that self-awareness. The reflection was the second point that was listed there. Again, it's just a part of the time in building our awareness and reflecting on You know, if we were to say that we were unhappy about something, we could just stop there. But it's really getting specific about what we're unhappy about, what it is that we want to change, what we don't like about either ourselves or our environment or our situation. It's courageous to confront that within ourselves or with others so that we can overcome that. And that's all a part of that emotional intelligence and a part of that reflection. So that's why our first recommendation in breaking the mold is to pause.
Can I add
Um,
another element to it?
yes, please.
So, even from a spiritual or metaphysical perspective, pausing can simply mean the way you start your day is to not immediately after you've gotten, you brush your teeth and dressed and you come to your home office or you've traveled to your home office is to kind of jump right in, but to meditate. You know, the whole kind of aspect of mindfulness has put a light on how important meditation is to clearing the debris and allowing us to just kind of center ourselves. And even if you don't want to or have not been effective in meditating, just breathe. I found that during the height of my busiest season during the pandemic, I was racing from one video conference to the next, one conference call to the next, and literally my whole day from 8 until, I work about 12 to 13 hours a day. I wasn't even breathing. So I was going to a holistic practitioner who was telling me, Michelle, even if you just take increments where you just kind of sit back and take 3 inhales and 3 exhales, is a way for you to just kind of clear your mind. And when we meditate or clear our minds, sometimes the answers, as Amber said, we are over analyzers, overthinkers, we're overdoers. We don't even know how to be. When we give our mind a break, then you never know, some of the unanswered solutions and questions will just, come to our consciousness. So yeah, that just adds to kind of the emotional intelligence aspect.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that, Michelle. Before I move on to the next, I just want to ask, are there any ways that you pause during your day that you want to share with others outside of what we've recommended? Maybe taking a walk during the day or at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Venice says
When
when
you take a walk. Yeah.
yeah, when I take a walk, I get answers to my questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And so recognizing the importance of that need can be there that we may be ignoring. Venice also says taking walks with that intention in mind. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
great. So I'm going to add to our list taking a walk.
And sometimes just sitting outside in nature, not doing anything, just being still and just
Mm.
listening to the birds
Mm-hmm.
and just knowing that everything has a rhythm to life and I don't have to rush all the time.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah. And how that can center us and recharge us, and we feel so sometimes when we feel so scattered and flustered that we're not being effective, we need to just pause and let ourselves recharge, having that compassion for ourselves and allowing ourselves to re-energize could be just what we need instead of trying to push through it. Sometimes pushing through it works, but sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so our next P is prioritize. Who on this call time blocks? Is anyone a time blocker, a calendar blocker? Oh, Venice, of course you are. Yes, yes. Now I will say I'm gonna
Sometimes.
call you. You are as well, Joelle.
Yeah, I tried to. I've definitely been trying more because like people keep scheduling meetings during lunch. And I used to, when we were in the office, I would specifically take my hour lunch or 45-minute lunch. But now it's harder because, people schedule meetings or you have to do one thing and jump to the other. So I have been trying to block time off. Even I put time in my calendar. I have to do my annual assessment, which I haven't done yet because I keep pushing it. But I try to do the time blocks, but I don't know stick to them.
Mm.
that the time blocking is so effective. And when we talk about putting stuff on the schedule, Michelle, I'll tell you, that's one thing that you inspire, one another way that you've inspired me. I mean, I saw Michelle's calendar one day and I was like, wait, that's the entire day. And it's got the colors and everything to it. And literally, I see someone saying, also Vinny saying in the comments, that the gatekeeper of my calendar is the gatekeeper of my time. It's like, I will say, if it's not in my calendar, it's not in my brain. It's like, that time blocking, and even what we had next on the list that I was going to reference, the do not disturb, and literally turning my phone on do not disturb during time blocks that I know I need concentration. Venice, I know you're working on a book. I'm working on a book as well. And that time to work without being disturbed, without the distraction of the phone, I literally have to put on do not disturb. I allow calls from my husband and my kids in their school, and that's it. And otherwise, I'm working during that time. Time blocking things as simple as, like we just mentioned, that time that we need for reflection or for pausing, important. Time blocking the time, like Venice mentioned, for phone calls. Okay, it's Friday. So on Friday, I might let myself have a little more flexibility. And between the hours of 9 a.m. and 12 noon or 11 a.m., maybe I'll allow myself to do some personal errands, or to talk on the phone, or do some of the things that I don't allow to happen at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday, but actually time blocking those things has allowed me to become a lot more disciplined in my controlling of my schedule and in my productivity. It allows for that, the third on the list, which I'll share my screen again, and that's building in the focus. Our ability to focus is, we have like in terms of psychology, I always like to give you the psychology behind things. Only have a certain amount of psychological capital per day before we kind of, like, our cup is full with our, if you imagine, our psychological capital. So our psychological capital is like our focus. We can only focus and be effective so much. Multitasking burns that out. Actually, for women, being on that time of the month on our period, that can make us feel depleted. There are things that deplete us. Stress depletes us. Multitasker, though, I just want to go with tasking, is a big part of what can deplete us. And that if we're trying to do too many things, we may feel like we're being effective, but we're doing a little here, a little here, and a little here, and we're not finishing things as much as we need to. But that time to focus is like our antidote to lack of effectiveness, and recognizing what it is that we need to focus is very important, and prioritizing the time to focus is very important. Before I
Oh,
move on.
I just want to add, because I want to address, Joelle made a reference that, she's effective in putting things on the calendar, and your story is our story, Joelle, in terms of maybe, we've mastered the ability to put things on our calendar. The question is, how committed are we to doing what we say we're going to do during those time blocks, right? And that in and of itself is about, how can we be our own accountability partner, right? And hold ourselves accountable for, if I'm blocking off a half an hour to do meditation, if I'm blocking off a half an hour to do my strategic plan, or whatever that block is, how can we stay committed to doing that so that it doesn't get eclipsed or eroded with something else? And that's where we are demonstrating kind of mastery over ourselves, as opposed to, external things having more control over us. Yeah.
Michelle, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was another that we had and I forgot to add to the list. If then. So one of the ways of doing that is to create if then rewards for ourselves. If I achieve X, then I will allow myself to Y. If then rewards have, for me, really been like my own personal kind of trickery of getting myself to do things and motivating myself, of saying, like, giving myself some reward that I know I shouldn't have all the time, or that I know, whether it's shopping or relaxing for it, taking a half a day off or something like that. But I'll allow myself to, if I meet this requirement. And that allows us to feel more in control, and also feel less guilty about whatever it is that we reward ourselves with. Because nothing is worse than giving yourself a reward and not and actually enjoying it, but when we know that we've earned it, then we're able to really fully enjoy it. Are there any other suggestions that anyone has in prioritizing before we move on to purpose?
Okay, I'm typing in the chat box. because this is what I do. Nothing takes 15 minutes anymore. Everything takes an hour. Travel, whatever. So what I do is, let's see, I was typing, if you do 2 hours for 4 projects for the day, 2, 4, 6, 8, you have calendar at 8 hours, right? Is that right? Is that math right?
For
8
2 hours of 4 projects. Uh-huh.
That's an 8-hour day. And those are the projects that are on your priority list. So what about all the other stuff that comes, barreling at us, family emergencies, appointments, whatever. But this is kind of how I've scaled down my day. And my mother tries to do like 40 things in one day. And I try to tell her, just try to do 4 and get those 4 done and squeeze yourself into that 8 hours for that me time. Take a break, take a lunch break.
Even Gary Keller has a book called The One Thing, and The One Thing talks
Oh,
about really just focusing on one of your main, like coming up with what your list of main priorities and projects and tasks are, and focusing on that one thing for the day, and giving, speaking to someone's point about priorities taking an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours, but really saying, like, I'm going to focus. I think that's what the 4 hour workday is based on as well. Like, I'm going to focus this time during the day, those 4 are the bulk of my time during the day, on the most important task, the one thing that's going to get me further in my job or further in my career, or make me feel most accomplished in the day, and focusing on that. And if we can look at our days as not just doing a little bit of each project, but knocking out big chunks of projects, then we often can look back and see how much more effective we've been. I know that's very um, advantageous to business owners, because we're often what do you say, Michelle? The cook, the bottle washer, and the
Yeah, the executive chef and bottle washer.
yeah. So that we're not spending too much of our time bottle washing, knowing what that one thing is for us. Also, just to make a quick point, and then we're going to wrap up soon. But work-life balance can sometimes look like counterbalance. That's another thing from the one thing that I got from Gary Keller's book. And that counterbalance, the whole theory of counterbalance is that if we are balanced, balance usually leads to leads to ordinary. If we aim to be extraordinary, then we may need to be off balance for a while, but never so off balance that we can't get back to our set point, to our original set point. And so that may look like a week or 2 weeks or some time that we commit to working more than usual, but then counterbalancing that with time to rest and relax. That kind of if then that we mentioned can apply in these times, because when we want extraordinary results, we often have to put in extraordinary effort. It's just not never neglecting anything that's too important, like family and friends, is what the book and myself recommends. But recognizing that we may be able to neglect other parts of our life if we are trying to achieve a goal. It's just not for too long that we feel off. Okay, our third P is going to be purpose. And purpose, I'm going to share my screen again. Purpose, Michelle and I were talking, and we're like, we got to include purpose in this. Purpose is so important to being effective at what it is that we do, because when we are passionate about what it is that we do, it often can allow, or I'm gonna say always can allow for it to be worth the sacrifices that we have to make, to be worth the challenges that we have to overcome. That passion can drive us. When we're passionate, we often have a mission, a vision, and defined values that allow us to be clear. So when we talked about before that lack of clarity, when we have purpose, we are more clear on why we're even doing the job or the business that it is that we're doing. And there's something about it that is not just that we're doing it to get paid, but because it's a calling for us in one way or the other. And when we are purpose driven in our work and we feel like we're working in our calling, then we have the energy and the motivation to really overcome a lot of these barriers. So if you're going like, oh, all of this sounds good, but I'm just not motivated to do any of this, because I have here, will you as a question, will you as a question. And if no is the answer, then that may be because you're not passionate about what it is that you're doing. And so is what you're doing something that's short term, that's for right now, or is it something that you're really committing to for the long run? And so, that's at this time of year, I find that this is always a great time of year to take an assessment of where we are in our careers and where we are in our lives. Don't just start working on your new year on January 1st, but start preparing for it now, asking yourself the questions. I have this, if you go on my YouTube channel, that you can always link to from our emails, I have a 9 signs it's time to quit your job. And one of them is that lack of passion and purpose is becoming prevalent, and it's just no matter what happens on the job, you're like, I don't have any more cans, I cannot, and that's just it. And it's important again to have the emotional intelligence and the awareness to recognize that that's the case and to be courageous enough to do something about it.
I just want to add, wait, am I muted? No, I'm not. I have to get this out in terms of limited resources, because it's just something that so many of us are really kind of grappling with, whether you run your own business or whether you're part of a team. And the radical action that I propose that it will take, it's called Managerial Courage. And Managerial Courage is about pushing back tactfully and diplomatically, because with so many employees, leaving positions and organizations based on budgetary constraints, not having the funds to replace them, it's, the work is then parceled out and more work is given to a few. But managerial courage sometimes is to respond to the task of additional responsibilities that have been asked of you. And I'll use Amber's expression, if this, then what? Meaning, if more is being given to you, it's a negotiation with your manager or whoever is, dispersing the task. If I'm going to pick up this, then what do I have to drop, or what do I have to assign a lower priority? And it's being empowered enough to have that conversation, because oftentimes, as dutiful professional women, we're a yes waiting for a question, and we kind of take it on. And when we do that, we're training people how to treat us. And their intention is not to disrespect us or to negatively impact our work-life balance. But if we don't set the boundary, then we just kind of become overwhelmed. So it's, if I'm going to take on these additional responsibilities, then what do I have to give up? What do we have to push back on the priority timeline? Something that enables you to really kind of negotiate as opposed to just taking it all on. But it takes a lot of courage in order to have those difficult conversations. Yeah.
I love that, Michelle. Joelle, I'm imagining that you're hearing that and going, okay, I might need to put some managerial courage in place based on what you mentioned.
I am taking notes.
Yes, yes.
I like that.
Yeah, right. Me too. I've written that down and put it in the chat for us as well. Managerial courage. If I'm going to take on this, then what's going to get less prioritized? That's so key because so many folks are becoming overloaded by the lack of employee resources and staff and what their new responsibilities are. So I'm really glad you shared that with us,
And
Michelle.
I'll just add one other thing, because I know we're coming close to the end of time. I remember experiencing this myself back in the day when I was in corporate, and I, was not due to COVID, but it was just, being asked to do much more than I knew I had capacity. Even though there were times that I had to demonstrate confidence and courage and letting things slip between the cracks because I was not able to successfully negotiate a reprioritization. It was like, well, Michelle, that's something that we're going to ask you to do. I had to get comfortable with being unpopular, right? And it really boils down to, because all of a sudden I had my manager going, well, we thought that you'd be able to, this is why we gave you that promotion to vice president. I mean, all of that stuff. And this is what fundamentally we become fearful of. Will my value and will my brand within my department or my company wane or be compromised if I don't take on these additional responsibilities? But it's how confident can we be in our value and our worth when we're not popular? And sometimes, managerial courage can kind of backfire in the sense that they start to look at us, a little differently. But again, it's, to thine own self be true. So again, any one of us hearing this, if it's resonating, temper it to what you're confident in doing, but don't be afraid to kind of push the needle a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Enough said.
So great. It is 1:29 and we're coming up on the hour of our time together and on the half hour of the time. But we thank you as always for joining us. And just to reflect, or I'm sorry, just to review really quickly, we're recommending and suggesting that you consider pausing, prioritizing, and getting clear about your purpose to overcome the barriers to effectiveness at work. And we thank you for what you've added to that presentation as well. It is 1:30. Michelle and I'm going to stop Facebook. Thank you guys for watching. We're going to go off of being live on Facebook. I'm going to just take one more minute, if you will. If you have to go, that's totally fine. We're looking for a topic for December. And so our theme for the month, for the quarter, has been wellness in the workplace. And we've seen Venice, you've been with us, and Katrina, you've been with us, and Joelle, you're a friend of a friend who's been with us, and Sheila, hey, we see you on too, and we just want to take the time with you to ask you if you have any suggestions. And if you do, feel free to share them with us. Otherwise, we'll come up with our topic and we'll be sharing it in our email and asking you to join us next month as well.
Yeah, think about it and send us an email. Yeah, we'd love to hear what topics you want us to cover off on in December and even in the new year, because we will definitely be continuing this.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so catch the recording. Please tell a friend to join us next time, and we will see you all the first Wednesday in December at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. Thank
Okay.
you.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate you spending the afternoon with us.
Yes. Thank
All
you.
right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
There.
Thank you guys so much. Bye-bye.
Welcome.